Have you ever noticed those apps that start out doing one thing and then suddenly they do, well, everything? They're called super apps. And there's a really specific, powerful strategy behind why they succeed, especially in emerging markets, that most of us totally miss. So let's break it down. Okay, so this is the central puzzle for today. And I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. How does a company like Grab, which just gives you rides, suddenly start offering loans, insurance, and investments? It seems like this huge random leap, right? Well, it's not. It is a brilliant, calculated move, and we're about to show you exactly how and why they pulled it off. All right, so here's our game plan for piecing this together. We're going to start with the puzzle itself, then dig into these unique, high-tech, low-trust markets where all this magic happens. We'll find the one critical missing piece of the puzzle, reveal the powerful build-don't-buy strategy, and then see how a huge problem gets flipped into a massive victory. And of course, at the end, we'll give you the analyst's secret sauce, a framework you can actually use. Okay, let's dive right into that big question. You see, the journey from a simple service app to a financial giant isn't just about bolting on more features. It's about solving a really fundamental problem that stops most other companies dead in their tracks. Now, to crack this puzzle, you first have to understand the pretty wild environment where it all goes down. We're talking about markets that are full of contradictions, places that are incredibly high-tech in some ways, but at the same time shockingly underdeveloped in others. And here is that exact paradox in action. On one hand, you've got almost everyone with a smartphone and widespread 4G internet. People are connected. But then, on the other hand, the formal financial system that we take for granted, it's basically missing for most of the population. Very few people have credit cards, and there's this really deep-seated distrust of old-school banks. This disconnect, this is the key to everything. So let's say you're a company like Grab trying to do business here. You immediately hit a wall. You need to process payments, you need to verify your users, but the normal tools you'd use for that, they just aren't there. You're hunting for a critical, missing piece of the whole puzzle. Think of it like this. Imagine you're building a superhighway to a booming city, but whoops, you hit a massive river with no bridge. You can't just keep paving, right? Well, in these markets, those financial bridges, things like credit bureaus or reliable payment systems, they're completely missing. So standard business models, they just crumble. Now, this missing bridge actually has a formal name in business strategy. It's called an institutional void, and it's a fantastic concept. It's a bit of a fancy term, but all it really means is that the market is missing the key players and structures, the middlemen, that make business easy and trustworthy everywhere else. No reliable credit checks, no universal payment apps, nothing. And here's where the thinking gets really sharp. Top analysts don't just see a generic problem, they get specific. They name the void. For a company like Grab, the issue wasn't just payments are hard. The real problem was a trust and infrastructure void. People just couldn't trust each other in digital transactions, and the systems to support that trust simply didn't exist. So once you've put a name to that void, you're faced with a huge decision. And this leads us to one of the most powerful strategies in business today. This is that strategic crossroads. You know you need a bridge to get across the river, but there are no bridge-building companies you can hire. So what do? Do you just pack up and go home, or do you figure out how to build that bridge yourself? The answer is a strategy called internalization. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. If the market can't sell you the service you desperately need, you have to bring that solution inside your own company. You internalize it. You stop looking for a bridge builder, and you become one. And this is precisely step-by-step what Grab did. They couldn't rely on credit cards, so guess what? They built their own digital wallet, GrabPay. They couldn't trust outside systems to check on their drivers, so they built their own vetting process. To fill that massive trust and infrastructure void, they basically had no choice but to become their own bank, and in a way, their own regulator. And this right here is where the story gets really brilliant. Because what started out as a massive headache, this fundamental problem with the market, actually became their greatest strength.
I mean, this is the ultimate strategic judo move. They took a market inefficiency and turned it into a competitive advantage. Just think about that for a second. By building the bridge, they didn't just solve their own problem. They now owned the only bridge in town. They turned a huge market weakness into an untouchable fortress. And suddenly, anyone who wanted to cross that river had to go through them. So, let's wrap all this up with the secret sauce, because this isn't just a cool story about one company. It's actually a powerful analytical framework you can use to understand really complex business situations anywhere in the world. It really all boils down to 3 steps. First, you isolate. You cut through all the noise and find the one critical problem that matters most. Second, you name it. You give that problem a very specific name, like a trust void or a logistics void. And third, you explain. You use a framework like internalization to show why the company's strategy wasn't just random, but actually the only logical move they could make.
So the next time you're looking at a company trying to make it in a tricky market, try on this new analytical lens. Don't just see a laundry list of problems. Look deeper. Look for the underlying absence, that missing piece, that institutional void. It's a really powerful way of thinking that explains so much about how business works today. And it leaves us with one final and, I think, pretty exciting question to ponder. What's the next great void out there, just waiting for someone to come along and build the bridge?